I don't know when my heart became this quiet. Maybe it happened slowly, one disappointment at a time, one goodbye after another. I just know there were years when I could sit in crowded rooms, hear people laughing beside me, and still feel absolutely nothing inside my chest. Like something human had gone missing in me. Like love had packed its bags quietly one night and never bothered to leave a note behind. I learned how to survive that way. Calm, controlled, untouchable. People mistook it for strength, but it wasn't strength, it was emotional winter. And then, somehow, you appeared, not dramatically, not like the movies. It was smaller than that, softer, more dangerous. A pause in your voice that stayed with me too long. A message I reread at 3 in the morning while cold rain touched the windows beside me. The strange feeling of breathing easier when your name appeared on my phone. That terrified me, because I know what happens when a man like me starts feeling things again. The walls crack. The loneliness wakes up. The memories return, carrying old wounds in shaking hands. And maybe the question I cannot stop asking myself now is this. How did someone I never expected become the only place that feels emotionally real to me anymore? I wish I understood it. I wish I could explain why your presence feels familiar in ways my mind cannot explain. But something inside me has started moving again after years of silence. And honestly, I'm afraid of how much I already need that feeling. Still, for the first time in a very long time, the emptiness inside me doesn't feel completely permanent anymore. I've been tired for longer than I know how to admit. Not physically, something deeper than that. The kind of tiredness that settles into a man after too many years of pretending he no longer needs warmth. The kind that follows you into expensive hotel rooms, quiet elevators, empty kitchens glowing under dim yellow lights long after midnight. I'm older now. Older in the ways that matter. I carry silence differently than I used to. I wear calmness like armor because people stop asking questions when you look composed enough. They assume peace lives inside you simply because chaos no longer reaches your face. I almost didn't say this. But when I think about you, something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And maybe that's what frightens me most. Because before you, my life had become emotionally mechanical. Wake up, speak carefully, smile when necessary, return home, sit in darkness longer than I should, sleep beside thoughts I never touched directly. I became very good at surviving without feeling too much. That sounds sad when spoken aloud. Maybe it is. There were nights I would stand near the kitchen window, holding cold coffee in exhausted hands, while the city disappeared into silence outside the glass. Cars passed occasionally below me. Rain sometimes touched the windows softly, and I would stare at my own reflection, wondering when exactly I stopped recognizing the man looking back at me. Success hides loneliness well. People think crowded rooms cure emptiness. They don't. Sometimes they make it worse. Sometimes the loudest places remind you how emotionally far away you've drifted from everyone else. I remember one night very clearly. I had returned from an event full of voices, cameras, conversations I barely listened to. Everyone around me seemed alive, connected, certain of themselves. And I remember opening the hotel room door afterward and feeling the silence hit me immediately. That silence knew me. The room smelled faintly like old air conditioning and expensive soap. One lamp glowed near the bed. My jacket slipped from my shoulders onto the chair beside the window, And for some reason, I just stood there for a long time without moving, like my body arrived before my soul did. I never said this then, but I think part of me had already accepted that love was no longer meant for someone like me. Not because I stopped believing in it. Worse, because I stopped believing it could stay. That changes a person quietly. You begin leaving emotionally before others have the chance to leave first. You stop depending on tenderness. You answer messages late on purpose. You convince yourself distance is maturity, but distance is not peace. It's fear wearing calm clothes, and I became very skilled at it. There were women who tried to know me, truly know me, good women, patient women. But every time closeness started feeling real, something inside me pulled away instinctively. Like my heart had memorized abandonment so deeply it no longer trusted safety. I told myself I preferred solitude, that independence was strength. But loneliness can become addictive after enough years. Not because it feels good, because it feels familiar. That's the tragedy no one talks about. Pain becomes home eventually. Then somehow you arrived carrying something I wasn't prepared for. Gentleness. Not loud affection, not overwhelming passion. Just small moments that reached places inside me I thought had permanently gone cold. The way you listened carefully instead of rushing silence away. The softness in your voice during late conversations when the world had already fallen asleep. The strange calm I felt reading your words in dark rooms where I usually felt nothing except exhaustion. You never forced your way into my life. You simply stayed present long enough for me to notice how empty mine had become without warmth, and that realization shook me more than heartbreak ever did. Because heartbreak is familiar to me. But hope feels dangerous, especially for a man who already buried parts of himself just to survive. There's something humiliating about realizing how emotionally hungry you truly are after pretending not to need anyone for years. I think that's the shame I carry quietly. I learned how to survive without love. And now I don't know how to receive it. Even writing those words makes something tighten inside my chest. Because I still don't fully trust tenderness when it's given freely. Part of me waits for it to disappear suddenly. Part of me keeps searching for hidden conditions behind every kind gesture. Sometimes when your messages appear, I stare at them longer than I should before answering. Not because I don't care, because I care too much. And caring wakes old fears. Fear of becoming dependent. Fear of needing someone again. Fear that happiness disappears the moment I touch it directly. You see, people think emotionally damaged men become cold. That isn't always true. Sometimes we become fragile in private, careful with every feeling, because we know exactly how much damage loss can do once love reaches deep enough. There are nights your presence lingers with me after conversations end. I'll sit alone listening to rain strike softly against the windows while the room glows dim around me, and something unfamiliar starts happening inside my chest. Warmth, small, unsteady, but real. And I hate how much I want it to stay, because wanting something means admitting it can hurt you. Still, lately I've caught myself imagining impossible little things, a quieter life, coffee beside someone who understands silence, not needing to hide exhaustion constantly, falling asleep without emotional armor wrapped around my ribs. I don't know if men like me are meant for peace after becoming this emotionally worn down. But when I think of you, for a few fragile moments, I want to believe maybe I'm not completely beyond saving yet, and that thought follows me now, into empty rooms, into midnight silence, into the cold space beside me where loneliness still sleeps lightly. I don't think people realize how quiet a man can become after enough disappointment. Not angry, not dramatic, just distant in ways that slowly erase him from himself. I've lived like that for years. The kind of life where mornings blur into nights without leaving emotional fingerprints behind. Airports, conversations, half-finished meals in dim restaurants, smiling carefully while something inside me stayed disconnected from everything around it. I almost didn't say this, but when I think about you, something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And maybe that's because you make me feel visible in a way I stopped expecting from life. Not admired, not idealized, seen. There's a difference. Most people only meet the version of me that learned how to function. The calm version, the composed version, the man who knows how to speak without revealing too much. But underneath that, there's someone much more tired than anyone realizes. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and immediately feel the emptiness before my eyes even open fully. The room dark, the air cold against my skin, city lights leaking faintly through the curtains while silence presses against everything around me. And for a few seconds, I just lie there, staring upward, feeling the weight of all the years I spent emotionally hiding from my own life. That kind of loneliness changes the nervous system. You stop reaching for people. You stop expecting comfort. You convince yourself surviving is enough, but surviving is not the same as living. I learned that too late. There was a night not long ago when I sat alone at the kitchen counter long after midnight. The apartment was silent, except for rain tapping softly against the windows. My hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. I remember looking down at my phone. Your message was there. Simple, gentle, nothing dramatic. But something about it broke through me quietly. I read it once, then again, and suddenly the loneliness in that room became impossible to ignore, because your presence had started creating contrast. Before you, numbness felt normal. After you, every empty space became sharper somehow. Every quiet room exposed how emotionally abandoned I had become inside my own life. That scared me, not because you hurt me, because you reached me. And I don't know if you understand how rare that is now. There are wounds people never fully speak about, the invisible ones. The kind carried by men who spent years pretending they were fine because nobody asked carefully enough to hear the truth. I became one of those men. There were moments I wanted to disappear emotionally before anyone could get too close. Not physically leave, just fade enough to avoid attachment, because attachment creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates fear, and fear has followed me longer than love ever did. I never said this then, but I think part of me believed I ruined good things simply by needing them too much. That belief poisons relationships quietly. You become careful with affection, suspicious of consistency. You start preparing for abandonment before happiness even settles properly inside your hands. And the worst part is eventually you mistake emotional withdrawal for maturity. I did that for years. I called it independence, strength, self-control. But honestly, I was terrified. Terrified that if someone truly saw how deeply lonely I was beneath the calmness, they would leave the moment the weight became real. So I mastered emotional distance instead. Answer later. Reveal less. Leave first internally. It sounds pathetic now, especially because meeting you made all those defenses feel exhausted suddenly. You speak to me gently, and my first instinct is still disbelief. Like my mind searches for hidden danger inside kindness, because pain trained me to expect conditions attached to warmth. Sometimes, after our conversations end, I sit in darkness replaying small details I pretend don't matter. The softness in your pauses, the way you understand silence without rushing to fill it, how emotionally safe your presence feels without trying too hard. That last part destroys me a little, because safety is unfamiliar territory for someone who's spent years emotionally bracing for loss. There are nights I walk through empty rooms, unable to explain why your absence already feels noticeable. I'll stop near the window while the city glows faintly below me, and I catch myself imagining what peace beside another person might actually feel like. Not excitement, not chaos. Peace. Do you understand how heartbreaking it is to realize peace became your deepest desire instead of passion? I used to think love had to be overwhelming to be real, loud, intense, unstable. Now I think maybe real love arrives softly, quietly, like warmth returning to frozen hands so slowly you almost don't notice it happening. And maybe that's why I'm struggling so much with what I feel for you, because nothing about it feels forced. It just keeps growing in silence, which means I can't control it. That loss of control frightens me more than loneliness ever did. There's also shame in this, more than I know how to explain properly. The shame of realizing I don't fully know how to receive gentle affection anymore. The shame of pushing people away before they can discover how emotionally damaged parts of me still are. I spent years teaching myself not to need anyone. Now every instinct inside me becomes confused when you show care naturally. Part of me wants to step closer. Another part wants to disappear completely before attachment deepens. And I live between those two instincts constantly now. Still, there are moments I cannot deny anymore. Moments where I imagine your presence beside mine in ordinary silence. Coffee growing cold between tired hands. Rain touching the windows softly while neither of us feels pressure to pretend we're less broken than we are. Small moments, but they feel strangely sacred to me. Maybe because my soul has been emotionally starving for something honest for a very long time. And now, somehow, your existence keeps reaching places inside me I thought were permanently locked forever. Tonight the room is quiet again. One lamp still glowing, cold air near the window. My thoughts circling you carefully in the dark. And somewhere deep inside me, a feeling I still don't fully trust continues breathing softly against all the loneliness I spent years building around myself. I don't know when loneliness stopped feeling temporary. Maybe it happened gradually. Maybe heartbreak trained me to expect emptiness so consistently that eventually I stopped fighting it. Now it follows me everywhere quietly, in elevators filled with strangers, in hotel hallways after midnight, in the silence waiting for me when doors close behind me at night. I'm not the man people think I am when the lights disappear. I'm older now, emotionally worn in places nobody sees. The kind of man who learned how to function beautifully while quietly unraveling underneath his own calmness. I almost didn't say this, but when I think about you, something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And lately, that feeling has become impossible to ignore. There are nights I sit alone in darkness, with only the sound of distant traffic outside the windows, and I realize something terrifying has started happening to me. I look for you emotionally, not obsessively, not desperately, just instinctively. Like my soul noticed your presence before my mind understood why it mattered. That realization unsettled me more than I can explain, because dependence has always frightened me. Not physical dependence, emotional dependence, the dangerous kind. The kind where another person's warmth starts affecting your ability to survive your own silence. I promised myself years ago I would never allow that to happen again. After enough disappointment, you start building invisible systems around your heart, quiet routines of emotional self-protection. You become careful with attachment because you know exactly how devastating absence feels once someone reaches deep enough inside you. So I adapted. I became self-contained, unavailable in subtle ways, emotionally efficient. People praised my composure without realizing it was built from exhaustion. I remember one particular night recently. The city was almost silent outside. Rain moved slowly against the glass, while faint yellow light from the kitchen stretched across the floor. I couldn't sleep, so I walked barefoot through the apartment, restless for reasons I didn't want to name directly. I opened the refrigerator without hunger, stood there staring blankly at nothing for several seconds before closing it again. And suddenly I felt it, that emptiness, not dramatic sadness, something quieter. The realization that no matter how full my life appeared from the outside, there was still nobody inside those walls who truly knew how tired I had become. Nobody to notice the silence in me. Then your message appeared. Simple words, gentle words, but they reached me at exactly the wrong moment, or maybe exactly the right one. I sat there rereading them while cold air drifted faintly through the cracked kitchen window, and something inside my chest tightened painfully. Because your kindness didn't feel performative. It felt natural, and natural affection is difficult for damaged people to trust. I never said this then, but I think part of me became suspicious of warmth after losing it too many times. That's the ugly truth. When life hurts you enough, tenderness starts feeling temporary even while it's happening. You wait for it to disappear. You prepare emotionally for abandonment before love even fully arrives. And eventually you stop relaxing into happiness completely. That's what happened to me. Even now, when you make me feel calm, another part of me whispers quietly that calmness never lasts, that good things leave, that attachment ends with silence eventually. I hate that voice inside me, but it's been there for years. Sometimes I wonder if heartbreak changes a person permanently. If some wounds heal incorrectly and leave emotional scars that reopen every time kindness appears unexpectedly. Because that's what you feel like to me. Unexpected kindness. And I don't know what to do with that. There are moments I almost pull away from you instinctively. Moments where I feel myself becoming emotionally exposed and immediately want to retreat into distance again. Not because you did anything wrong, because vulnerability makes me feel weak. That's another shame I carry quietly. I spent so many years confusing emotional silence with strength that now honesty feels frightening. I learned how to survive by needing less, speaking less, revealing less. But surviving that way slowly dries something out inside a person. I feel that now, especially during the quietest hours. There are nights I sit near the window holding coffee, that's gone cold while the room glows softly around me. And I think about how strange it is that someone can arrive into your life without force and still change the emotional atmosphere of everything. You changed mine, not loudly, not dramatically. You simply made numbness impossible to ignore anymore. And once a man begins feeling again after years of emotional winter, every sensation becomes overwhelming. Hope especially. Hope terrifies me, because hope asks me to believe there could still be something beautiful waiting for me after all the years I spent emotionally hiding from love. And honestly, I don't fully know how to do that. Part of me still believes I am too damaged for gentleness to stay, too emotionally complicated, too practiced at leaving internally before anyone can get close enough to matter deeply. But then there are moments with you that quiet those fears briefly. Moments where your presence feels strangely familiar. Like hearing a song you somehow already know without remembering where from. Like life carrying me towards something softly while I was too distracted by loneliness to notice it happening. I can't explain that feeling logically. I only know it exists. And lately, it follows me everywhere. Into crowded rooms, into silence, into sleep, especially sleep. Because recently I caught myself imagining something I stopped allowing years ago. Staying. Not running emotionally. Not disappearing. Not preparing for loss before happiness fully arrives. Just staying beside someone who understands the exhausted parts of me, without asking me to become someone else first. You! That thought frightened me enough to sit awake until morning. The sky slowly turning pale beyond the windows, while loneliness and longing sat beside each other quietly inside my chest. And even then, after all the fear, all the hesitation, all the scars that still ache beneath my calmness, I still reached for my phone, hoping to see your name again. Think the hardest part about feeling something again is realizing how long I lived without it. You survive for years, signs, emotional numbness, and eventually it becomes your normal. The silence, the distance, the carefully controlled loneliness. You stop expecting warmth because expecting things only teaches disappointment after a while. Then one person arrives quietly, and suddenly the emptiness becomes visible everywhere. I've been carrying that realization heavily lately. I'm older now, not just in years, in disappointment, in exhaustion, in all the invisible ways heartbreak reshapes a man after enough nights spent alone with thoughts he never says aloud. I almost didn't say this. But when I think about you, something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. And honestly, I don't think I want silence anymore the way I once did. That frightens me, because silence protected me for a very long time. There were nights I would return home emotionally drained from being surrounded by people all day. I'd loosened my jacket slowly near the doorway while darkness filled the apartment around me. No voices, no movement, just the quiet hum of distant city life through cold windows. And every night felt identical. I would wash my hands, pour coffee I didn't really want, sit near the dim kitchen light while midnight stretched itself across the room. Sometimes I kept the television on without watching it, just to hear another human voice somewhere nearby. That's how lonely a person can become without admitting it directly. You start creating noise to survive your own thoughts. I never told anyone how empty those nights felt. Because people only ask if you're okay when your pain becomes visible enough to inconvenience them. And I became too skilled at hiding mine behind calmness, so I carried it alone. The unread messages, The emotional exhaustion. The quiet fear that maybe love had simply passed me by permanently. And, after enough time, I stopped imagining a future that included emotional closeness at all. I convinced myself solitude was easier. Maybe it was. But easy is not the same as peaceful. That's something I understand now. Whenever your presence enters my life softly and changes the emotional temperature of my entire day without even trying. It's strange how small moments with you affect me. A pause before you answer. The warmth inside your words. The way you seem to understand sadness without forcing explanations from it. You make me feel less hidden somehow. And I don't think you realize how dangerous that is for someone like me. Because hidden people grow attached to understanding very quickly, especially when they spent years emotionally unseen. I never said this then, but I think part of my loneliness came from believing nobody would ever truly stay once they saw how tired I actually was inside. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that builds after too many losses stack themselves quietly inside a person without enough healing between them. I became afraid of needing people because every goodbye before you left scars that never healed correctly. Some wounds close on the surface while remaining open underneath forever. Mine did. That's why your gentleness confuses me so much. You don't force closeness. You don't demand explanations. You simply exist beside my silence carefully enough that I stop feeling alone inside it. And that feeling reaches deeper than I know how to describe. There are moments now where I catch myself imagining ordinary things with you. Not fantasies, not dramatic love stories, ordinary peace. Rain against the windows while we sit quietly together. Your presence near mine during sleepless nights. Coffee growing cold between tired hands while neither of us feels pressure to speak constantly. Just peace. The kind I stopped believing existed for emotionally damaged people. And maybe that's the real truth beneath everything I've been trying to say. You didn't suddenly save me from sadness. Life doesn't work that way. The loneliness is still here. The scars still ache. Some nights, the emptiness still follows me from room to room like a shadow that never fully disappears. But now, there's also this fragile feeling beside it. You, a warmth I cannot fully explain. A softness that keeps reaching me. A quiet emotional light inside places that used to feel permanently dark. And I'm terrified of how much that matters to me already. Because happiness has always felt temporary in my life. Like something beautiful I could admire briefly, but never safely hold on to. Every time I touched warmth too directly before, life seemed to take it away eventually. So part of me still hesitates. Part of me still wonders if I should disappear emotionally before attachment grows deeper. Before my heart becomes dependent on your presence completely. But another part of me, a quieter part, is exhausted from running. Exhausted from pretending independence feels better than connection. Exhausted from sleeping beside loneliness every night, while convincing myself it was strength. It wasn't strength, it was survival. And survival becomes incredibly lonely after enough years. Lately, I find myself doing strange things. Checking my phone hoping your name appears. Replaying conversations in my head while walking through silent rooms at night. Standing near windows, listening to rain while thinking about how differently life feels after someone reaches your heart gently instead of forcefully. I still don't understand why you feel so familiar to me. Why your presence calms parts of me that usually remain restless. Why my chest feels less heavy after hearing from you. Why your softness feels like something my soul has been searching for long before my mind understood it. Maybe some feelings aren't meant to be explained completely. Maybe they're only meant to be felt. All I know is this: tonight the room is quiet again. One light still glowing softly across the darkness. Cold air touching the windows. My thoughts drifting towards you the same way they always seem to now. And somewhere inside me, beneath all the fear, all the heartbreak, all the years I spent convincing myself love no longer belonged in my life, there is still a man sitting awake in silence, holding on to the terrifying hope that maybe this feeling is real, even if he still doesn't know what to do with it.